So I added a debugging project, so you do see debugger. Now, if you're using a environment like Visual Studio Code, it's got a debugger built into it, and that's fine if you know how to use it. But if I'm using Google Colab, let me get my Google Colab going, and there is a debugger in here, which probably is not the best debugger in the world, but I like it because it's very close to the assembly language debugger, GDB, which I'm used to. And you probably aren't unless you're into advanced hacking. But anyway, I thought it was pretty charming, and I wrote a project where you learn how to use that one. See, if you make a notebook here, and you put in some code, there are various options here, like you can see your local files and stuff, but there's no debugger, which is pretty annoying. So I found you can add a debugger, and that's what this project does, which is 12. So you install IPDB, and what this code will do, it will install IPDB from the repositories, which by the way is a pretty horrible thing and is getting us in a lot of trouble with supply chain vulnerabilities. But anyway, without worrying about that right now, we'll dump it from one of the public repositories. Then you import it, and then you turn it on. And once you've done this once, as long as you keep using that same instance of Google Colab, it will remember. So that will download it from a public repository of Python libraries, and then install it. And installing the stuff it depends on. Now it's got it turned on. Okay, now my debugging is turned on. So if I go here and put in a program with a bug, which is here, I guess I'll put it in a new block, although I could just put it in the same block. All right, so I'm going to take this number, modulus 0, which is going to involve dividing by 0 and crash. So now instead of just getting a Python error message, IPDB catches it and gives me a window here where I can now type in a debugging command. So if I wanted to know, for example, why did it crash, let's see what the number was at this point. I could p num. It'll show me num is 25, and I could p div, and div is undefined. So now I have a literal 0 there, so I don't really need a debugger to tell me it's 0. It would be a lot more difficult if this was some kind of variable that was calculated that happened to turn into 0, but that's the point. So you can use P to see the value of a variable, you can use Q to quit debugging and enter, and you can use C to continue, and there are other functions, but that there is enough to do what I usually want. Now what I normally do is I put extra print statements in it, and then when it works I comment them out, and all this does is automate that for you. You can do the print statements. The other thing you need is breakpoints. So that's down here. Let's run this one, and it'll show you what it looks like with breakpoints in it. All right, so this is going to divide by n. It's going to count down from n down to 0 by -2 and print n%i. So eventually it's going to crash with n%0, and that's fine. I can see that, but I can put a breakpoint here. This is what it looks like, ipdb.set_trace. That's a breakpoint, and these are super important, and that's what's not so easy to do by just adding extra code. So I want it to stop at every iteration of that. So I go here and run it. Okay, it stopped, and notice it prints a few lines of code next to it so you can see what's going on. So I'd like to see what I is, so I print I. Okay, I is now 50, so I'll continue with a C, and now I can print I again, and I is now 48. So I could print it and watch the variables change and see when the bad thing happens. All right, that's what this does. I can quit the debugging here. There's a whole bunch else it can do. That's enough for most cases. And there are students that asked me to help debug their code before, and I helped, but I realized I really should show you this. How to debug your own code is much better. And then you'll see if it's doing something like going off the end of an array or something. Anyway, that's useful, and so I have a flag you can find here. And there's a cheat sheet that shows you the other commands it has. It has quite a few other commands, although those are probably the only ones I would ever really use. Print, breakpoint, quit, and continue. That's actually enough to get almost everything you need. But it does have a lot of other options here. Down, up, you can mess with the stack. You can turn on complicated conditions. Debuggers have all these fancy things, but I don't really need them. Anyway, that's what I wanted to show you. You should definitely know how to use a debugger of some kind. I'm going to stop this.